milestone in Colorado. This is a really interesting milestone that we've actually made. And so yesterday, for those of you that were on the health department's website, and then I've been on federal noise as well, um, Omicron kind of swept through the country and it's kind of sweeping out of the country. But there's two other variants on its tail that they're watching. And the one that they're worried about right now, if it hits, it'll hit in April. So we may just have a little lull and then we will be back into dealing with a whole new issue in April, but we'll be vaccinated. And so far, this one's been in Israel. And so far, the vaccinations are holding up in Israel quite decently, even though they went ahead, because it's summertime in Israel and part of Israel anyway, and they're giving a fourth vaccine that they're going to be offering probably here in the fall. So this is a mature Omicron and what it looks like. And you notice that it's got a lot of horns, and those are called protein spikes. And what's changed from early COVID over to Delta, those are cousins to this baby. And they're not brothers and sisters, they're actually cousins. But what's changed in these protein spikes is that in the early days, they were little threads and they were yellow, or they would be copper, or they would take magnesium, they'd be blue. And these babies are actually bloodsuckers, and they take the DNA out of the blood cells of new cells and structure to make new ones. So this particular slide, this one is about 4 hours old after its birth. So we have some new guidance coming. They alluded to it yesterday, but I saw this from the federal noise that I went to. And so this is where I think we're going to go. So I wanted to give you this information so you could kind of start thinking about it. And then we're going to go, and then when it is actually presented, which I think will be not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that, then it won't be as foreign to you. So they're going to break it up into immunocompromised with illness. So those folks that have like multiple sclerosis, or if they have cancer, or they have Parkinson's or MS, those that have some sort of other immunocompromised situation will be addressing that. And we're going to have to figure out, and I'm looking at it, and I've got some ideas, and if I get confirmation of what I think will work, I will present it next month, how we can actually go through our census and decide what level of compromise folks are having. Now, if the doctors will help us, that would be a great story, but I'm not expecting that. So if they're mildly sick, we're going to continue to do the PCR testing type thing, and then fever management, and then symptom management. And so mild to moderate will be one sector, moderate up will be another sector, and then severe to critical will be those folks that are actually in the hospital. And and again, we're going to be looking at our populations based off of their chronic disease issues. And what I don't have a good handle on, and will be working forward on, is how does folks with chronic mental health issues actually come out in this? Because some people with schizophrenia are severely impaired, and other people with schizophrenia are fully functional and have a job. So I don't know the answer to that yet, but it's on my radar, and I'm trying to wrap my arm around it. It's the same thing with dementia. Early dementia, some of our early dementia folks that need protective oversight are 100% physically fine and take no meds for any chronic diseases. They just have dementia, especially Lewy body dementia type thing. So I think it's going to be really interesting as this evolves in the next few weeks, how this is going to look and how it will come forward into our industry. So in January, we had 300 and some outbreaks, but we had 0 deaths, 0. And we were not the population of people taking over the intensive care beds. It actually still was middle-aged, chronically impaired people with medical problems, mostly that were in the ICU beds. So we've documented over 1 million positive tests since they started collecting this stuff. And we're still on pace to be one of the top states in the country. I truly think it's because we did more testing than a lot of other states. One of the reasons that we have that designation, because there are sister states around us that did 0 to little testing, or as little as possible that they could get away with. 3.9% of our population is fully immunized of our children that are 5 and older, up to our older adults. Our industry is still doing incredible on our residents, and we're still sucking at our staff. So I thought you'd like to see a baby Omicron. This is about 2 hours old. And if you look carefully, you're going to see little purple nails. That's what I call them. And those are baby spikes that mature into those yellow spikes. And the red spikes are the babies that go out and gather the nutrition they need to give the mama and daddy spikes, the yellow ones, the energy they need so that they can cause damage in people's bodies. Omicron's been interesting in all the studies posted all over the world, is totally mostly bronchial of an upper lobe pneumonia. Very little other stuff. Where Delta, they've got 15 long hauler syndrome, then they just posted that today in the CDC stuff. And they've identified 15 common long haul symptoms from Delta. But in Omicron, it seems to be staying up in that upper bronchial tree. So, as I said, we're doing really good in vaccinating our residents. So congratulations on all the work you're doing. I do want you to know that in the new rules, that the RFC that just came out, fully vaccinated is the booster with the 2 primaries. And if you took a J&J, they want you to get the second one to be either Moderna or Pfizer, and then the booster in the same product is preferable. So, the confusion, and I've actually talked to Peter about this yesterday, is please, help the facilities to have a conversation tool with families and visitors, because just because masks and the mandates are off in the state, pretty much, so like city workers and state workers and stuff are getting now a pass that they don't have to be mandated to vaccinate. That does not release us as an industry or our staff. So we're still on the top of it. The other thing I'd like you to do is, if you know how, go into the health department's website and download the new version of chapter 2 and put it in chapter or section 5 or section 4 of your COVID notebook. And if you don't have it, email me and I'll send you my copy. And then remember, when you're hunting something down in chapter 2, control F is your friend. So what chapter 2 is all healthcare facilities that get money or have any protective oversight in the state come under chapter 2 regulations. And that's where flu shots is talked about, where COVID's going to actually land on the long-term policies, and some other things that are important to our industry. And so please, if you don't have the new chapter 2, get it so that I can be of help to you. And if you don't understand how to use control F, I'm glad to teach you. All right, so some legal news. So a bunch of states, a bunch of entities, a bunch of different job categories, unions, all that, try to push up mandated vaccines to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court's turned down every case. So what's starting tomorrow or the next day is that Canadian truck driver thing. Apparently they're organizing in California and going to try to be in Washington for next Tuesday's State of the Union. And I don't even understand what their bitch is about, because they do not have to vaccinate unless their company says so. So the only vaccinations required is if you go Canada, the US, or over the other direction. So I'm not really sure what they're trying to accomplish. And hopefully they don't make a havoc out of things. But they've thrown out almost all the religious exemptions. So the Supreme Court said religion cannot dictate the science, and they've turned down all of those. Sorry, OSHA, has been in our business for a couple of 3 years now, and people were trying to block OSHA from having a voice. Sorry, guys, I've got something caught in my throat. See if I can clear without driving all nuts. And so the OSHA policies are going to stand up, and OSHA will be back looking at food manufacturing, meat plants, farms, where how they produce their produce, all of that. And it's not only about COVID or even Omicron, it's also about listeria and C. diff and some of these other things that are popping up. So OSHA it seems to be stabilized. And then they're not going to deal with any city or state mandates or anybody trying to push it out of the state and up the chain. So I was real surprised. I thought the Supreme Court would get in the middle of it, but they have chose to stay with their conservative side and stay out of the political side. So where are we at? Well, we're actually in Colorado looking really good compared to many other states. And I've been really impressed how well we have done as a state when I look at some of the other state noise that's going on. So if you compare our vaccination status in the industries, if you compare our rates with our vaccines with seniors and how we're doing compared to states like Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, we're in gold standards. And so to me, as hard as this has been, I'm kind of glad we're on that side, because these other states lost a lot of federal funding because they pulled the funds back to help them. And so Texas also had some funds pulled back because they decided that they weren't going to play with what the CDC and some of the other organizations have recommended. But Colorado stayed right on top of it. So far we're on a liquid gold. All right, so one of the things I want you to do is look in your section 2 of your book. You've got your resident list. So I had a conversation with one of the surveyors this morning, and she's been in some of the homes that has done the COVID notebook and asked me how I thought of this and how I got it started. And I just said it just came to me and that we did it. And so anyway, she likes it. And so 2 or 3 facilities have had perfect surveys and in this last week that have had infection control surveys or outbreak surveys because they had a really good COVID notebook and it was solid and they were sticking to it. So flu vaccines also should be on your resident list. And when they got their flu vaccines, there are several new vaccine products on the market. So people that had trouble with the vaccinations over the years, it had nothing to do with the viral load. It had to do with the carrier load. So when I worked at McKesson, which I did for a decade, we built all the vaccines for the whole world, McKesson did. And they were putting in product to be able to ship this stuff on ships and have it on a ship for a long period of time. Now all flu vaccines are moved by air, so they were able to take out that stabilizer that was trying to hold it in these hot ship beds. And that was one good thing that happened. And then they've also built 2 new vaccines out there for people that have problem with eggs or anything related in that family. And so they're expensive. They're $25 instead of $19. But there is a new flu vaccine available for those that have had issues in the past. And then one of the things, you will hear more about this also from the state, just because you get the flu doesn't allow you not to have the flu shot. You will be responsible to have the flu shot. So we're at 100%. You got one person for 100 employees that you can give an exemption, medical exemption, and then no religious exemptions on flu or COVID. So I just kind of have taken the stance that we just got to get it done, and we'll have to keep working with folks that are got convictions that there's not enough science and all the other stuff I've been hearing for a year. I hope that most of you are up on CLIA. So that is a national database. So when you get all your flu shots, whether it was yourself, your staff, your residents, whatever, and your little card, they all have to be loaded into CLIA. Well, I had mine all done out in Aurora and they weren't in CLIA. So by the time I got a hold of Aurora and with the people that were giving the vaccines and got it straightened up in CLIA, that was kind of an interesting journey. And so I told the state, that some of the vaccines haven't been loaded in and they needed to get on their case because they charged for them. And so they're actually doing a crosswalk mapping to make sure. But if you will go in this and get an account, and then any vaccine you give, including hepatitis B, hep C, flu, whatever you're doing in your facility, it will go on CLIA. Then you can print it out and put it in their medical record. Now, one of the things that occurred to me a few weeks ago is we don't want this in the general medical record that can go to any staff person can look at. You actually want to put this in your locked medical record, just like you do your I-9s. So if you're going to run these CLIA reports, which I encourage you to do, to validate that they are truly vaccinated, then please make sure that you lock them up so that they don't get stolen. They arrested a nurse in the state, and she had 10,000 vaccination cards that she was giving out for $100 a pop to people with that false vaccination information on it. So it depressed me royally. But at any rate, it's the state of the union these days. So any questions about vaccinations or getting the documentation and getting the federal report out? Anybody have a problem or have a question around that before I go? Okay. All right. So there's also a new admission letter. So make sure that all your admissions since January 1st have a copy of this letter, and it's on the CDPHE portal. I also have it if you can't find it. Or don't have it, and all new admissions must have this letter. And if they have all their vaccinations, they have the right to know of any that there may be residents in the house that are not vaccinated or staff that are not vaccinated. So it is literally, outing you. There's also on CDPHE's website, every one of your buildings is actually posted how many of your staff and how many of your residents are fully vaccinated. So it's public information. So make sure that what you're putting in EM resource is accurate, because I have found some of this on the public site, and I called the facility and they go, no, that's not true. And I said, then EM resource is false. So you need to get in there and fix it. So that's where they get that information that goes to that public domain that anybody can look. Any nursing home, adult day, our industry, dialysis centers, all of that is listed in that, that public portal that they put up. If you get somebody has an outbreak, it doesn't matter whether they're vaccinated or not, don't screw around doing any more rapid testing or PCR testing for 90 days. Mark the calendar, put a note in the chart, their next test date. So the 91st day I would test and see where you are. And because we did that experiment and did all these testing, didn't learn anything from it other than it cost us a lot. And then don't forget that on anybody with outbreaks that you need to put them back on daily oxygen. I was working on a case last night, and the guy had he had COVID, he had Delta, and now he's got Omicron, and his oxygen levels are 72, which is death normally. So trying to figure out how we're going to deal with him for the long haul is going to be interesting. So again, like I said, mark your calendar, 91st day, rapid test, hopefully negative. If he's still positive, PCR, and then check in with your health department. And then oxygen levels, anybody that is on outbreak status. Okay, so here's how you get to CLIA. So you'll have these slides later, and that's, I put it in here, and then how to enroll and how to train. It's not hard. It's just different than anything that we're mostly accustomed to. All right, so outbreak status has changed. Isolation's changed to 5 days if there are no symptoms. So if they have symptoms, then you want to do longer until they're asymptomatic for that 5-day period. And they have to wear the N95s. I think if we follow what the feds are saying, in 2 weeks, we'll go back to our blue mask unless we're in outbreak status. I'm praying because I hate the N95s. So we'll have to see. So I don't know how many of you know that in the PCR testing, they're not looking just positive, negative. They're looking at the depth of positivity. So the magic number is now 35. Took us a whole year to figure that one out. And so if you're over 35, these are all the people that they tested every 4 hours in hospital ICU units to kind of get this data and start figuring out how long, whether the antivirals and some of the other monoglucal things that they're doing and some of that stuff that they have actually done, and how long it takes to drive that down below 35. And so there's several white papers in Google Scholar if you want to read about it that's somewhat interesting. And so PCR testing now will be negative if it's under 35 in the reporting cycle. You still may be positive and have the antigens, but if you're under 35, you will not be considered positive and need to deal with it. So again, some of these long haulers and some of the studies, they're staying 45 to 50 for months, like 18, 20 months. But they're still going ahead and vaccinating them because, again, Omicron is a cousin to Delta and not a sister. Okay. All right. If you're in quarantine, your staff still have to rapid test every day, and that you may need to be in crisis staffing. So what Peter said yesterday, that if in the EM resource, if you can be in contingency staffing, which means you're barely holding on and you're kind of faking it, or you're in emergency, because we didn't ask for emergency staffing enough, they are canceling it next week. I'm not sure that is a good idea. And the last time they canceled it, we had to get it back up within 2 weeks. So make sure EM resource that you also are declaring how your staffing situation is doing. Following, and if you turn on the caret under what they say crisis and contingency, it explains what they're looking for. All right. This is one of the things you want to get off the shelf. All staff should be totally trained. Again, it's 2022, and you should have this in your training, either your training book or however you're tracking training to show the department. And these are the websites that you can use for the videos and information. So some of you have staff that are here auditory, some are visual learners, and some are combination learners, but you want to go back through it. I've been out a little bit and I'm still seeing poor hand washing techniques, check-ins not appropriately done, people not wearing masks in some facilities when it's mandated. We're not been released from that yet. Residents not being checked every day for temperature, and those that had outbreak on oxygen. So we're still not in good balance. I think we can fix this if we can just get everybody to understand the basic principles. All right. If you hire somebody new in your orientation, you are responsible for compliance and competencies. And the ones that are big that I'm seeing the department focusing in is hand washing is still, and I've been in facilities where the soap is not disinfectant. Went back to soft soap. You can't do that. Stay with your disinfectant soap, okay? Putting on and taking off PPE appropriately. There's some great new videos on that makes a little more sense than the first ones did. And then cross-contamination is a big one. So giving meds out in a room with a cart, and if you take the cart in the room, then you've got to wipe it down, but the cart still needs to be cleaned daily, even if you don't take it into their rooms. And little things like that. That's the areas that staff are still struggling with, is cross-contamination. So if you're a small home and you're trying to take care of 8 residents, give meds and make a meal, you're going to cross-contaminate because you've got to stay with the task and finish it. And we still haven't got our residents in our small homes to understand, do not interrupt, we're doing this right now. And unless you fall down or you're a 911 call, have a seat. I'll get to you in a little bit here, but we need to finish this up, because we went through 10 years of customer service, and staff were running around with chicken with their heads cut off and not finishing things because they would get interrupted 100 times. We've got to break that cycle with our residents. The other thing that you need to train to is the flu information, especially some of the new stuff that's come out in the last few months. There's several great videos on flu, and then respiratory outbreaks, because we are having other things besides SARS and flu out there. So we've got actually some really common colds. The schools are seeing that. We've got measles outbreaks. We've got chickenpox outbreaks. So if they're seeing grandchildren, they may haul into your house shingles if they were around a kid that has an outbreak of chickenpox. So we've got to do some more training to our families and to our visitors Please don't come in our home if you've had a child that's been sick at your house until your child has had 5 days without symptoms. We're going to have to do more work on that, and it's going to be hard because our families are already trying to get legislation through that they can willy-nilly come in any facility during a pandemic and they don't have to follow the rules. I think we're going to get that thing PI'd tomorrow, but I'm not 100% sure because, again, it's just a lot of drama and not good for our businesses or for our state residents or our staff. All right, RCFs. We got a new one the other day. So again, in your electronic notebook on your computer, keep all the RCFs as they come out. And the updates are usually posted in pages 6 to 8. And then Control F works beautifully. And just pay attention to the changes so that you can stay on top of things once you feel like you've got the base decently put together. All right, so now I'm going to go to where I really wanted to go. We need to do quality management updates. So the rest of this talk next month in April, I'm going to concentrate on quality so you can get your QMPs. And there's 4 areas in quality management that you need to have together for this year. And one of them is a refreshed vaccination plan. So take your old vaccination plan that you put into the system last year and to keep what you want, update it, keep it focused and simple and what you're doing. And then I asked Peter for a new letter to families and staff. Hopefully we'll have that in the next week. He's got an older letter in the system that you can look at and use if you wish, but I did ask him to do an updated one. And then, like I said, your census and your staff roster, if you will please keep those current, that will be a nice big plug for you. All right, visitors. Some of the conversations I have with people that are upset. Yes, they can visit, but they must follow the visitation rules. If you do not have them posted on your doors, they don't know what the rules are. So they must wash, they must wear the mask, they must sign in, they must not have a temperature. And then, like I said, hopefully we're going to get this other one that I've asked be added to this officially, is if they've been around anybody that's been sick or had sick kids, no matter what the illness is, they have to have 5 days since the people they were around have been sick, including themselves. So I'm trying to get that added officially so that we are protected. So you can still dictate where they can visit. Now, Medicaid will say to you in a hot minute they can visit in their residence rooms. And I told Medicaid, nope, not going to happen. Until we're 100% clear, we're going to stay with the visitation policies in the RCF. So in the RCF, you can either have a dedicated room that you can defog and clean between visitors. You can do the common areas if everybody's vaccinated and they all wear masks indoors or outdoors, or they can do outdoor visits, still preferably that we put some social distancing in all of that. Clans, so family units can sit together to visit a loved one. That's perfectly fine. But like 2 cousins or 2 aunts, that's not a family unit. So they need to maintain social distancing. So like I said, the family calls that I get here, and when I'm trying to unravel their anger and get them back on track, all I can say to them is, we've had a lot of families lose loved ones. Would you like to talk to one of them? And that usually stops them in their tracks. And so we've had probably in our agency, we probably well over 200 known deaths of seniors that we have known for years, or family members of those seniors. And it's been hard. It takes a toll on us, and it takes a toll on the families. So that's something you can try. Say, I'd be glad to let you speak to somebody that lost a family member to COVID if you'd like to know more about it. All right. I was so happy. This was a major win. And I'm going to crow about it heavily because I started on the first week when we first had to close down. The surveyors were going from house to house, refused to wash, refused to mask, refused to put on a gown, refused everything. And they were carrying COVID all over the frickin' place. And so the feds, state wouldn't do anything, and they were protecting them. And so a bunch of us nationally, a nurse leadership group I belong to, we went to the federal level and we won. So on the 3rd of February, it came to a screaming halt. CMS let them know loud and clear in every state across the country that all the surveyors will follow the guidelines, and they do not have any medical excuses. They don't have any religious excuses, and they will follow all the PPE just like we do. So I was so happy that the nurse leadership group won this, because it took a lot, and we fussed on a weekly basis and on every level that we could until we got this cleaned up. And then we started on National Guard. And so same thing, if you do have a National Guard come to your facility, you want proof in the pudding of their vaccination status. They must have finished all the training. They will wear PPE, and they will social distance, and they won't hang out together and gossip like they like to do. So there was a major win that the National Nurse Association actually pushed through. All right. So getting back over to quality, where we want to go. I'd like you this month to catch up your fire books, please. They're really behind. Some of you have not had drills forever. Some of you have had quasi drills, but you need to get back up. So remember, we're on monthly drills. You must time them and figure out what you can do to get your people out the quickest possible and get them to a safe zone to where they meet. And then, because we're going to tackle your evacuation protocols, all what we've learned in the last 2 months in Colorado in April. So that will be, I've slated April to totally deal with the QMP on evacuations. Make sure your forms are up to date. Make sure if you have the big water tanks that they have been drained and refilled in the last year, and it's in your fire book, and that you have your annual inspection. All of the new assisted livings coming on the market will not be allowed to have those big water tanks. They will be piped into the hydrant systems. And that's fairly dang expensive, what I'm seeing so far. Make sure you have your fire evacuation map. It should be where the your firebox is, and then you have rooms designated somehow. If you have a room that somebody really needs to physically go in, that you figure out a code on there. And then what I've been doing in a lot of facilities on the back of their bedroom doors is putting a big rig arrow and teaching them that if the fire drill goes off, follow the arrow, either go right or go left, and trying to help them to retain that information and not go totally crazy. And because you got to account for everybody. The other thing is check your fire extinguishers. Make sure that they're current, that you've got the little card on there, that they're being checked monthly, and clean the dang things. I've seen so many filthy fire extinguishers with the residue from furnaces on them. So make sure that they're clean and that they're ready to go. If you have not had a fire class with staff practicing how to use an extinguisher in a while, think about putting that on your summer teaching agenda. And maybe you're going to replace a couple of fire extinguishers, and you can use the old ones to have staff practice with them, because you don't do this every day, and people do get scared. I like the new multi-purpose extinguisher the best, because it can tackle any fire, including a grease fire or an electrical fire or whatever you're dealing with. And then if you guys are loud smoking at your facility, any smoker must have a fire-resistant waste can in their room. And you need one in the front entrance of the doors that people come and go. And you also need one in the common area. And the reason this came up is we've had several fires in buildings, and people picked up their butts, like folks do, put them in their pockets, and then put them in their room, and they caught drapes on fire, or bed sheets on fire, towels on fire. And so these waste cans, I did find them. Home Depot has them. I've also found them at Walmart, and I have found them on Amazon. So this is a tag. I've been seeing a lot of this tag pretty much with every house that allows smoking at their facility. And then you need in your house rules, you need to have a very simple house rule that says we follow all smoking precautions and fire maintenance protocols. And then what I've done with some of the newer folks that I'm working with, we're putting it in the resident handbook. And then we're putting a separate paper in their contract for resident services on smoking responsibilities. So, and the reason that we're tackling it different is I got into a big argument with the state a year ago on whether we were giving out 2 cigarettes an hour to people that are high risk because they would smoke all their cigarettes in a day if you didn't do this protocol. And CMS Medicaid said, oh, you're taking their rights away. And we're not, no, that's a behavior plan. And this is how we help these folks with severe chronic illness, especially schizophrenia or bipolar, so that they're not out of money and they're not going butt hunting in the community and bringing all these butts home. So we finally won a compromise. If we did it in the resident handbook and we did it in their service contract on admission, have them sign a smoking protocol that they would adhere to, then it wouldn't be considered a rights restriction. So we're going to try it and see how much trouble we get into. All right, some kitchen update. Remember, kitchens are zones. They're not your house kitchen where you do what you want to do, how you want to do it. And we have to retrain everybody to food safety. So this is the second thing I'd like you to get everybody to go back and do the food safety handling class, and take the manager class if you've never taken it, so that you can learn some of the better restaurant protocols and some of the equipment you need. Like you need the colored cutting mats for cutting produce and vegetables and meat, and you need coordinated knife handles for what knives are used to do what products. And I'm just seeing that we're pretty much out of order all over the place. So I'm going to do a lot more talking about this next month. But just a heads up, let's try to start getting our staff 2022 food handler cards caught up, so that people are, when we fuss at them, it won't be foreign to them. The other thing I'm seeing is mop water. Mop water cannot, firstly, it's a bucket that you hold mop water and cannot be just left. So you have to do a zone and you have to dump it in an approved dump site. I'm trying to get as many facilities to go to Swifter type products and get away from mop buckets, because they're hard to manage, and 2, staff will make it up and they make it incorrectly, and then it's filthy dirty. The mop's filthy dirty. You can only use that mop in one zone. So if you're going to do mop water and mops, you need a lot of heads, because once you do, like that bathroom, then that mop head comes off. It goes into the dirty can to go into the washer that night, and it goes in a disinfectant cycle and then a wash cycle. And so, like I said, we're just totally out of kilter with mop water. And you're not going to see a lot of mop water in hospitals and stuff anymore. They've actually went to electronic cleaners, and I hardly ever see the old-fashioned way of cleaning floors in nursing homes or hospitals, doctors' offices, or any of that. So you cannot put it down the toilet. It's the wrong sewage pipe. I don't know how many of you are aware, but they're testing the water for COVID, Delta, Omicron, and regular COVID in waste, and it's called potable waste. And they're actually figuring out community spread all over the nation. And that seems to be a better tool than all the nosy things that we've been doing. So you want it to go in the right drain system. It must be marked. You should have a sticker on it that mop water only, and then it has to be cleaned. So if you do your tub, like if you have a shower and you do that shower tub, then it must be cleaned thoroughly, and you have to have a flow sheet, that they actually put the mop water down, that they cleaned it, and they initial it, and that has to be turned in on a daily basis from your staff that's assigned to them. So I want you to think about this. Because mop water is getting harder and harder to manage. And there's going to be some new regulations coming in on water management in the next few weeks, and new rules about how you're going to have to watch not only your heat of your water, but your pH, and doing some testing, because for some reason we've got Legionnaire disease in the state, and we hadn't had any for a long time, and it is creeped back in. So the health department did a webinar on it today, and I've asked for the slides, and I'll talk more about it next month when I understand some of the rules a little bit better. All right, new admissions. Please get your house full. You need the money. You need to regroup, and you need to get your marketing and get your families comfortable. We're not going away from what we've had to do. And so it's our new norm, and families have to understand our new norms, but they're tired. And we get calls on a daily basis, and people that need to be in nursing homes that are still at home, people that need to be in our industry that are still home, people in homeless shelters that should be in our industry. I've placed 4 guys in the last 2 weeks in respite assisted living, and see if we can turn it around and if we can get back to the community at all. So like I said, there's a whole lot of new need. There's a lot of new dementia. Holy cow, dementia has gone from 0 to 50. And so what used to take 18 to 24 months to progress is happening in 4 or 5 months. And especially these folks that are not vaccinated, that stayed at home, that got sick. And so we're seeing places like Kim's that's going to be really hit hard in the next few months, because there's so many people in the community that need to go into 24-hour care. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out how we're going to cope even here in our office, because I do most of that work. Okay. For those of you that have relationships with the rehab centers, if you don't, get one. It's a good flow for getting admissions. Just make sure that they've got the first vaccination on board. So Peter told me at state will give the first vaccination if the rehab center will just call them. They will come and give that first shot. And then we can do shot 2 and the booster at the house. I have no problem with that. I don't want them coming cold turkey to you from a rehab center, because we have no idea where they've been or what that staff looks like. So if we could get that first shot in, that is, I think it's important. And Peter agreed with me that it was important. So they're willing to help. I'm willing to help you with the argument. And I've been down it with Powerhouse, or Powerback. I've been down it with the one in Thornton. I've been down with the one at Lowry. And I just wouldn't let them transfer the client to the facility until it was done. And so they have to eat those bills, because Medicare doesn't pay them when it's their fault because they didn't get the vaccine on board. So I think we're going to get the cooperation so that they actually order them on admission like they should. And then when you're onboarding, there's a bunch of people that are way behind. They haven't seen a doctor forever, or they've only had telehealth, and telehealth documentation sucks. So please be okay with asking for what you need to do a good admission. And if they can't give it to you, they'll get it if they really want to transfer that person. And I have been able to push this and get the stuff I need, even in psych. I've been able to push it to get the stuff that I want, so that we're doing a decent admission. All right. There was new rules that came out last year. I don't know how many of you are up, but you need to have new resident agreements. They were due in January. And so we're kind of breaking those in 2 parts. One is the money side. So people that do Medicaid or ACBS products, you do a simple state contract form. The state has it posted, and it's how much money a month you are responsible for on the date. Trying to get more auto deposits so that you guys aren't running around trying to get checks cashed or get cash checks that are bouncing, all that kind of stuff. And the banks they're called ACHs, and the banks have been really good. So far, that's been a nice additional tool that we've been able to get done. Now, resident service agreements, on the other hand, you do those annually on the date, the month they moved in. So you can start working on them. And again, on your master sheet, if you have your move-in month, then you'll know when you need to have this new service agreement done. State's going to be calling those of you with doing ACBS, and they're going to ask you to send over service agreements and then documentation of what you're doing. And it may be one client, it may be all your clients, but they're going to crosswalk that to see how that's going. So they don't give a crap about the money. That's your problem. What they care about is the services that you're providing. And so smoking, and this is why I think we've got this smoking plan agreed on, so that we can hit this right up front and get it fixed so that they don't burn your place down. Okay. All right. I'm calling hiring new staff the ragged train. This has been a journey. And so the direct workforce, there is a group of people working on that in Colorado for nursing homes, hospitals, assisted livings, daycares, all that stuff. And part of that was that new money that you have to pay, that minimum wage piece of it. But there's a whole lot more. So what was interesting is Amazon and Netflix and some of those others hired a bunch of people out of our industries, and people have left them already. They're returning to the world of care. The other thing that's kind of interesting is a bunch of people that were in really high stress jobs are coming over into our industry, and they have some really decent education. So it's been kind of fun to watch. When you're advertising, I know Indeed's our most favorite, but don't forget workforce in your county. And if you got a really decent paragraph that they can post of why your facility is the facility to work at and what you're doing to support their goals in growing as a professional, that seems to be working the best. So just posting to say, I need somebody Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, evening shift 3 to 11 doesn't seem to be working. But if you can come up with language of why you're an interesting facility and the people you serve and who you are as a business, that seems to be this new bridge that we need to talk to workers for our industry. And then some incentives. I've kind of laughed, at my old age, when people call me and say, we'll give you $25,000 to come and work here for 14 weeks. And I look at it and I go, do you know how old I am? And then it gets really quiet. So it's like, there's some wacky incentives out there. So we'll have to just kind of figure out what those incentives are going to be. I do know that you also, and this will be in next month when I do more on this HR noise, I'll go through some of the new state rules and review them with you guys so that you're pretty current and you can catch up your HR world. But I don't know the answer to incentives. I just know we need to find them. This is your wage letter. So again, in the slides. So when you, every year you have to give a wage letter, and you needed to do this last month. So if you haven't done it, get caught up. So if you gave a raise above and beyond minimum raise, or if you move them up to minimum wage, make sure you give this wage letter, and this is what it looks like. And do two, give one to the staff person that you signed and they've signed, and then same thing, have a fresh copy, not a copy machine copy, but a fresh copy where you both have they call them wet signatures now, and make sure that you guys have those in your HR files, that these are caught up. Okay. All right, this is something new that HCPF needs. And so I've got you the link how to go to it. It's an Excel form. And again, HCPF may call you, even if you do not do Medicaid, but you have asked to be approved for Medicaid, though you don't have a single Medicaid client in the house, you could be asked to send this over before the end of business on any day they call you. And so I like the file, and it's kind of a really good thing to look at. So I'm going to encourage you again, and I will bring this back next month and we'll look at it a little bit more, how to use it. But just get the parts caught up, even if you don't understand it, and it'll go in your business manual. All right, new employees. Just as a reminder, you have to give 1 day of sick leave for every 30 hours worked, up to 48 hours in a calendar year. So this is if they're out for flu or COVID, Omicron, they get shingles, that type of thing. You can choose to make it other sick, any viral sick or any, fever sick or a bad tooth, whatever. You can choose to do that, but you're not required. If they do not use their hours, then it rolls over to the next year. So in January 1, the leftover hours rolls over, but you're only required to build it back up to 48. And so one of the things, the state's been going around, workforce is going around and asking you for your payroll. And if you're paying $12.96 to workers in your house that are taking care of your people in any shape, way, or form, you will get a citation. So I'm just begging you, please get this caught up, make sure you're doing the right thing. And then they're also looking at all 1099s because there's federal rules around 1099. And if you have hourly employees on a set schedule, you cannot have a 1099 employee. So if you hire somebody like me as a consultant, you can have a 1099. But when you have employees that work on a set schedule with set rules, they have to be hourly employees. Right, and I added a couple other things to the toolkit because I love toolkits. I like to get everything in one place so I can find them when I need them. So all I'm asking you to do is just please put them in your toolkit for next month because I will be using these items, and I will ask you to open them up so that we can talk about them. All right, so isolation plan. Catch up your employee records. Make sure you've got that letter of the new wages. Make sure you've got your policy for that 48-hour sick thing all done, and that your employee also has that. Or if you're going to make a new handbook, go that way. Whatever suits your fancy is fine with me. And then with your residents, make sure you've given them their new financial responsibilities for this year coming from the petty. From the single entry point, you should have that form. Or if you have private pay, if you've increased their rates, make sure that you've got that all done. And then the month that they moved in, that's your month to do a new resident service agreement for your people that's been there for a while. And then the people that are coming in, you need to do it upon admission what you know, and then review at 30 days, and then again at 90 days. So those are the kinds of things I want to work on these next few months with you guys and help you get this stuff done so that you can just do everyday work and not have to deal with all of this detail that is just plaguing us. Same thing with the isolation plan. Get it out, look at it. And then we're going to do a really simple isolation plan. And I've been playing around with it. And I think I can build it in 3 ways. I can build it for the small houses like Jeff's and Leanne's and stuff. And then like Kendall's out in Eastern Colorado, she has over 40. Other people that have, big, Lola's, she's got a lot of responsibility. I think we can build a middle-sized one for the bigger companies, and then the corporate-sized ones the corporates are going to have to help because that's a whole different animal. All right, so in March, a lot more, I'm going to try not to have to talk about COVID if God will let me. And I really want to work on human resources and communication and focus on employees, the business, and social status so that you're totally caught up. You got HR all done. That'll be check off. And then in April, we'll do the emergency preparedness plan, check off, and then figure out where you're going to go for the rest of the year and things that you want to get done. So if you need to fuss at me, there I am. Email me, call me, whatever. But this is where my head's at. Been thinking about it for a good 6 weeks. Talking to some people about it, getting some feedback. I'm open to ideas after April, totally open to ideas. What do you think would be useful? So I'm going to open up the floor and glad to answer any questions.